All right, well, welcome back to another episode of Unlearn with us. Super excited to have my friend, Lindsey Barr, joining us. Lindsey and I met, I think about 3 years ago now. And I think it was, I was trying to remember, and I think we've had this discussion, but I finally think I remember. What I did was I put a thing out on Facebook in Barrhaven and in a group and said, I'm looking for people who are doing, things in the community and, I'm looking for organizations, and somebody recommended you. And I can't remember who it was. It was somebody I didn't know. And then we connected and I contacted you, and ever since we've been in touch and, just following along in each other's different journeys, and it's been amazing. Lindsey is the founder of World Changing Kids. I'm just going to read what you've got here from your website. So World Changing Kids is a social enterprise dedicated to character education, leadership development, community building, and social justice. They empower children to believe that they can make the world a better place, help them figure out how they want to do this, and give them the tools necessary to make this happen. So awesome. I've learned a lot about World Changing Kids over the last few years, and I'm hoping to have my listeners or watchers or viewers learn more about it. So welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
And to add a bit more to the introduction,
Yeah.
I think it was also Richard Francham who first told me, no, I think he knew you at least. So I think I was following you already. And your CBC article I'd read. And then when you reached out to me, I was very excited because you were like a celebrity.
Oh,
and yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. I'm happy to give autographs.
Yes. All right. Excellent.
Awesome. So Lindsey and I have been doing some work together, when I was in the OCDSB, had some of my students working with Lindsey on different things. But I'd like to ask you a little bit about yourself, and I know you have a totally different story. Most of the time I'm interviewing, teachers or people who are in education, not that you're not in education, but you have a different story. So can you tell us sort of your connection to school and how you got into the world of education?
Yeah, I definitely do have a different story. I have a business degree, and then I worked in the government as a program officer for about 5 or 6 years before having kids. Then I had my children, and I didn't really want to go back to a full-time 9 to 5, and all that entails with also being a mother. So very fortunate that I was able to not have to go back. So I stayed home, and I did childcare. So I picked up some kids before and after school, just to kind of have things going on, have my kids involved with other kids, even when they were little. And I started really doing community building projects is what I would say. It wasn't so much education because it started when my kids were really young. I knew the type of community that I wanted to raise my kids in. I wanted them to know their neighbors. I wanted them to have a group of kids to play with in the neighborhood, head out to the park and have friends there, all the good parts from our childhood. And I realized if I wanted that, I had to build it. So I started with a book with 75 acts of kindness that kids can do in their community, which then led to education and realizing that kids learn when they're engaged in doing real work. So I started doing a lot of reading and a lot of following of people like you, and then looking at the education system when my kids got in there. I joined the school council at my school even before my kids were there as like the community rep, so I was really involved in the school that we go to. And then just volunteered and kept going in and trying things out on a bunch of kids. And my whole goal was to empower them to know that they can make a difference now, not just in the future, but right now, and help them fall in love with learning. Like learning is everything. It's not just what you do in the 6.5 hours you're at school. So let's, expand that. So it was just a very organic growth into what do the kids want to work on. We've done art, we've done science, we've brought in guest speakers, we've gone out and done tree planting, we've done, missions to feed the homeless out on the streets. So whatever the kids want to talk about, it's just finding them a way to get to that.
Yeah, awesome. And I in a lot of the research that I've been doing lately, it's been about homeschooling and unschooling. I've learned a ton about that, and I think when the more and more I learn about it, the definition of teacher and educator is significantly different. So when you say, "Oh, I wasn't a teacher," or "I wasn't," or whatever, I would disagree that now that definition, especially even now with COVID, you know, the teacher and the educator are becoming very different than just sort of, oh, I have a teacher's, I have a Bachelor of Education, therefore I am a teacher. I think there's, like you said, there's so much value in so much that we do in life that is not during those 6 hours of the school day. And I think we're, as a society, leaning towards understanding that a bit better. I don't think we're completely there yet, but I definitely think with COVID, that's definitely something. I know for me, when my kids came home in March, we tried the online learning thing, and my kids are not true academics and are more movers and like to touch and are very curious and get themselves in a lot of trouble often. But we had to adjust, and we had to, jump on the trampoline, and we had to, grow things in jars and do that type of thing in order for them to be learning. And that's just as valuable, if not more, in my opinion, as I'm going through this. So the next question I talk about is looking at like the education system and, what's good, what might need to change. So you were from the outside going in, and I know that you've put a lot of effort into working with the education system and trying to bring in these values and these programs. How did that all work out? What is the experience there? Was it successful? Were people open to it? What was that like?
So my school has always been super supportive, and they pretty much let me come in and, run workshops. I mean, like on volunteer, of course, I come in. And so I got to try out a lot of different things, and we made our own kindness booklet, for example, and I printed out one for everyone in the class. Or
Okay, so just before our technical difficulties there, you were talking about going into the schools and the stuff that you were doing. So keep telling us about that.
Yeah, okay. So started with going into my children's school and doing various things. And even in classrooms that my kids weren't in, I would go and try things out. And I was just kind of listening to what the kids really responded to, right? So watching, and I learned over and over again that if the kids were doing something that they felt was real and had a real impact, and that they were doing it even to help someone else, like we would make kindness cards to give out to the homeless or to give to the police or the firefighters, the kids were super engaged. So I just kept trying things out and seeing what worked. And then I went over to another school in our neighborhood, was working with the teacher, the principal there, on some things, which grew into the Year of Kindness for Schools program. So this totally built with that school, with that principal, with those kids. We did the pilot program there. And it turned into 100 daily acts of kindness that were to be read over the morning announcements by the students themselves. Everything was student led, student participation, fully, engaging the students. So 100 acts of kindness to be read over the morning announcements, 25 acts of kindness to go home for the parents weekly as a challenge, some assemblies at the beginning to explain it, a celebration at the end, that the kids got up and spoke in front of the microphone, giving them that leadership opportunity. So we did it at that school. It was really amazing. The kids loved it. I had about 10 kids that were my leaders, and they did it read it over the announcement every day. And then I started putting that into other schools. So that's been about 3 years. I mean, not this year, obviously, but the previous 3 school years. And I'd gotten into 10 schools, 11 schools with some version of it. Because as I learned, I tend to build things to like the Cadillac version, like, oh my gosh, this is so big and it's a whole year and it's all this stuff. And some schools just wanted like, let's just do one assembly. So then I came up with, a whole range of things. And I think I was up to like 1,700 students that, I'd been engaged with through this. It was amazing to see. And the feedback I got from the kids too, like I'd have kids stop me in the hall after saying like, that was a great assembly. What, can I be up on stage with you next time? I was like, oh,
that's awesome.
they want it, right? Like they want to be the leaders.
Yeah. And so did you find the schools, I guess if they were asking you to come in, like they obviously were wanting this type of thing?
Yes, it is a hard sell though. It is a hard sell to go school by school and ask them to pay for it. So sometimes when we still had the parent reaching out grant, that was used for a couple of schools. Otherwise, it was schools that had parent councils that could afford this and that were in the mind frame of it being important. And not every school is. And actually, I went to a school to present to the school council, and there was one parent who was like, I really want this. Our school really needs this. And we presented the best we could, and they didn't vote on it, So it was hard work getting into schools.
Right. Yes. I guess as an outsider coming in, some people can be skeptical too, right? I guess.
Yeah.
About that type of thing. Okay, so we've already talked about, you told us about what World Changing Kids is. You told us how it got started. So tell us, so you are doing these packages in the schools. I know it has evolved since then. I know it started. I have your book. I should have grabbed it. I have a few copies of it, The Acts of Kindness. But tell us more about, I know the last year or so, what's been going on and what's happening with World Changing Kids.
Right. So it is evolving as my kids grow up too. So the book was very much, let's talk about kindness, because that's how you explain things to very little kids, right? It's simple. It's like the book is kind of from kids ages 2 to 10. And it's little things like go and move your neighbor's garbage bins up to the side of their house if it's after garbage day and they haven't, because maybe they're at home with a sick child, right? Like it's like having conversations to build empathy and to get your children to want to be helpers, right? And to want to be engaged in the community. So that's when they're really young. And not that that ever stops, like kindness is kind of always at the base, but then the kids want more. They want real conversations. They want to be involved in what I am now learning. And I'm learning all this with the kids. I think maybe that's part of the success is I really am. Like I didn't know a lot about social justice or, a lot of these topics. And this is what the kids are hungry for. Like they want to be able to talk about this. They want you to respect them enough to tell them the truth and not sugarcoat it. And there was something I read that was like mind blowing. One of those, path altering or path leading things that I read that said it was only my white privilege that allowed me to even think about how much to tell my kids about a certain topic, right? Like, how some parents are like, oh, I want to shield them from the terrible things in the world until they're older. But that's a privilege that many people don't have, right? So the Indigenous family doesn't get to shield their children from the truth of missing and murdered Indigenous women because it's in their community, they're living it, And when I thought about that, I was like, oh yeah, like I kind of have a responsibility to tell my kids, not in a way that terrifies them and letting them lead with questions, but just keep opening these conversations. And then what it turned into was we're going to talk about it, and then we're going to come up with an action we can take to help make it better. So that is kind of what World Changing Kids now is, with kindness at the bottom. Let's talk about something and let's do something to make it better. So my theory being that by doing this, we'll raise a generation of kids who are engaged, confident, leaders. They have a purpose. They're living a meaningful life because they know that they can be part of the solution, as opposed to kids who don't have these conversations at a young age and aren't told actions that they can take now to make a difference, that's when you're going to see the kids who are anxious and apathetic and depressed because the world is overwhelmingly bad and they don't know where they fit
Right.
into the solution.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's interesting because I know my husband and I have different perspectives on this because of, like you said, the way that I teach. Now I work with high school age students for the most part, and we have young kids, an 8 and a 12-year-old. And I think it's a societal thing in that white privilege that we shield our kids from this type of thing. So I'll be having conversations with my own children, and my husband is appalled at times that I would even bring this up, and so how do we make that shift?
Right.
Like, and that's probably what you're doing, right? Is having, maybe having these tough conversations with kids that are maybe not your own, and helping the parents start to have those conversations, because the kids are now coming home, right, and saying, oh, this is what I learned, and this is with World Changing Kids, and this is what we're doing about it. So I think that's really good too, because I find with what I'm doing, it's often this societal shift that needs to happen in recognizing that things need to be different and conversations need to be different, and the way we look at education needs to be different, because we don't often question those things.
Right.
Right. It's just, that's the way it is. And that's how we move forward.
Totally.
So, okay. So tell us more about the programs that you've been running.
Right. So leading in the spring, so before COVID, I had started, and because my kids were getting older and needed kind of more challenging, content, we had started the Upstanders Academy. So it was just one group. I rented the church up the street, and we had 13 kids, and we were getting together one day after school for an hour and a half. And the idea was to get them talking about these topics, picking an issue that they care about, picking a passion project based on that issue that was going to, help make things better. And I would bring in guest experts, and we would do podcasts, and we would do videos, and anything the kids wanted. Like, I would just help them get to where they wanted to get to. So we had 2 weeks of that before COVID. And the first week, our amazing city councilor asked to come in, and I said, for sure, you can have the floor. Like, tell the kids what city councilors do, what, learning more. Let's teach them how to make their city better. And I had no idea how it was going to go. And I thought maybe he'll talk for 15 minutes, and then the kids could ask questions, and then that would be it. Anyways, the kids spoke for an hour with our city councilor. And the topics, because the floor was open, there was no agenda, there were no prepared questions. It was just ask whatever you want to ask. They went so many different topics, right? They talked about vegetarianism and veganism and the 100-mile diet. They talked about clean energy, solar, wind, nuclear. They asked why we have an International Women's Day. And then another child answered, right? It was just, and they were comfortable around the table talking to this official, right? And I was like, this is amazing. I'm so excited by it, because not only are these kids learning that their voices matter, that they have important things to say, they're going to know they deserve a seat at any table they want to sit at. And why wouldn't their city councilor want to talk to them?
Yeah.
So that kind of, again, started a wow, there's something here that is not able to be done in our school system because of the way, not that there's not great teachers who want to, for sure, but this kind of open-ended discussion is exciting to me.
Yeah, and I know where you're going, and I've been in the system and trying to do this type of thing, and there's just so many barriers and obstacles and curriculum that has to be covered, and and there's so much that that takes a direction of its own, and in school that's often not allowed, right? Like, you have the freedom to just be like, all right, let's go with it, and where it goes is where we go. And that's really hard to do in school, unfortunately. Depending.
So then, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, then I got to get to the part about this summer and what we learned over the spring and summer. So COVID happened, we all got sent home, and I just said to the kids, I don't know anything about Zoom. I've been on it once, maybe. This was, March. But I'm like, do you guys want to try bringing the Upstanders Academy online? And all the parents said yes, and all the kids said yes. And I had no idea if it was going to work. And we brought them in, and it was amazing. Again, they were still engaged in the conversation. And so we brought in guest experts to interview. So I think our first one was the Miracle League, which is the amazing adaptable, inclusive baseball diamond in Orleans, and Michelle and Bryce who run it. The kids spoke to them. Again, I was like, okay, I'll book about a half hour. Let's see where this interview goes. And it was over an hour. They talked, and they got to meet Bryce, who was born with cerebral palsy and is in a wheelchair, and they got to learn that he's an amazing leader and a kid just like them, and he likes video games too. And it was so exciting. And then I got a bit bolder, and I reached out to a company that I'd been following over in the UK. And they take old plastic inflatable pool toys, and they repurpose them into bags and accessories, thereby diverting, all that waste that is not biodegradable from the landfill. So Georgia called in with us, from the UK. And again, the kids, I think that was an hour and a half we were on the phone. Like, it was amazing. And then I kind of started thinking, well, what else can we do? What do the kids want? What do they want to learn? Who do they want to talk to? It's almost actually like going online opened up the world more, because you can talk to anyone you want to. So then we started doing one-off workshops. And one of the first ones we did was with Cody Coyote, who's a First Nations hip hop artist and advocate. And he's a motivational speaker. He's amazing. And so he came on and talked about how art healed him. I think it was healing through art, and his past growing up as a First Nations young man and what he experienced and how art saved him. And the kids loved it, and they asked for more. So we did like 4 weeks with Cody, and then we turned it into a 4-week session where they wrote a hip hop song with him. And then it just opened up to, like, we interviewed Ralston King about his, the work he's doing with the Anti-Racism Secretariat. We interviewed Thielen Kignosway, came on, again, a First Nation youth activist. I've got hours and hours of footage too that I'm supposed to be turning into videos, which is really slow work for me. Yeah. But the kids were so engaged. And then we ended up doing summer camps where we did 2.5 hours online with the kids, and we kept their attention for 2.5 hours. Now, it was split between myself doing world changing kid work, my friend Heather doing yoga, and Nancy doing art. So it was a pretty good formula of every 50 minutes, we mixed it up, and they got to move.
Yep.
It was really exciting, actually.
Yeah. So what's next? What is that?
I think I'm going to keep moving with that.
Yeah.
I've set up one Upstanders session. This is a weird time because nobody knows what our days are going to look like, right? So I have one group. I've got 10 kids doing an Upstanders session with me. And then I kind of just put a pause on because I was like, I don't know what else to offer or what people want, but I'm thinking of starting up these kind of world changing kids workshops again and doing them in the evening, even for families. Maybe twice a month, we just bring in a really super interesting guest speaker and the kids are able to ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's ever evolving, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Amazing. So if people want to learn more, follow you, see what you're doing, because I know I see you on Facebook. I see you on, it's mostly Facebook. I don't know. You tell me where can we find you?
Yeah. So definitely Facebook is what I am best at, keeping up to date. Also Instagram, Twitter, but I'm not very good at Twitter. And then our website too. So worldchangingkids.ca. And we have a newsletter that, again, I kind of put on hold because I didn't really know what we're doing right now. And we're overwhelmed with emails from schools and various other things. But I had been doing a weekly email weekly newsletter. So you can sign up for that to keep up to date. Yeah.
Wonderful. So so maybe there'll be some programs, possibly down the road that people, like you said, like some evening things. I know this is actually not going to probably be aired for another month. So I'm guessing by then we might be in stage 2 of COVID, depending on where people are in the world who are watching this.
Yeah.
Watching the news last night, it's not looking great.
No. So yeah, we just have to be very flexible right now, and and that's a good lesson for kids too, right? We can't really plan, which is scary, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, this is amazing, like amazing for you to be able to provide this opportunity. Um, Unfortunate that it's not in the schools, and that you have to do this outside of the school, but amazing program, amazing experience for the kids. And I mean, the guests that you're talking about, unbelievable.
That's what I keep saying. Like,
Yeah.
and nobody said no to us yet. Like, I keep reaching out, and everyone's like, "Of course, I'd love to talk to some kids who are interested in what I do.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
that'd be
I know.
amazing."
I always tell my students, I'm like, you need to use your youth, because
Yeah, yeah,
if somebody hears that, you know, a 16-year-old, especially teenage, like I know kids, like, of course, use your
yeah,
youth, but for teenagers who get such a bad rap, if a 16-year-old contacts, you know, an organization and says, I want to support you and I want to do something about it, you know, I said, you're going to get somebody respond.
yeah,
So take advantage of it while you're still cute.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Lindsey. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing about World Changing Kids. And we'll have all your information in the YouTube information down below, so that if people want to find you, they can.
Perfect. Thank
Awesome.
you.